I used to think I'd seen the worst of people. Life hadn't exactly handed me the kindest souls growing up. I was raised in a place where you had to grow tough skin just to survive. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on Thanksgiving Day. We were barely 10 seconds into dinner when I saw it. My son, Micah, just 8 years old, with his neatly combed curls and dress shirt buttoned all the way to the top like he was trying to impress someone, sat at the end of the long oak dining table. His little legs dangled off the high chair, nervous eyes scanning the table. But something was off. Everyone else had their fancy plates, white porcelain with gold trim, overflowing with turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, a real Norman Rockwell painting, except for Micah. In front of my son was a silver dog bowl, and inside it, kibble, literal dog food. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe someone thought it was funny. Maybe the kids were playing a prank. Maybe I was imagining it. But then I saw her, Evelyn, my mother-in-law, Garrett's mom, Micah's grandmother, if you could even call her that. She was sitting straight across from me, wine glass in hand, barely holding in a smug little smile. Her lipstick was perfect, her pearls didn't move when she spoke, and with a tone like she was complimenting the weather, she said, "A child from the slums doesn't need a feast." Just like that, in front of everyone. No shame, no hesitation. Micah froze. He looked down at the bowl, his shoulders tightening. He didn't cry. He didn't even say a word. But I saw it. The way his lip quivered, how he bit it to hold the tears back. He didn't want to embarrass me. That's who my son is. He holds in the hurt. Quietly. Always quietly. My stomach dropped. The room went completely silent. Forks hovered midair. My brother-in-law shifted awkwardly in his seat. My sister-in-law looked down, pretending not to hear. And Garrett, my husband, he just stared at his plate, like he always did when his mother took a cheap shot. Nobody said anything, not one person. It felt like time had frozen, like the world was waiting to see what I'd do. And in that moment, every version of myself battled inside me. The girl who'd grown up fighting to survive, the woman who'd fought to build a life, the mom who promised her son that he'd never feel small again. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a glass like some woman in a soap opera. Instead, I stood up, calm, steady. I walked to my son. I knelt beside him and took his little hand in mine. It was cold, clammy, but he squeezed back. I looked up at Evelyn, right into those ice blue eyes. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. And then I turned around, my son's hand in mine, and we walked out of that house, past the roast turkey, past the crystal chandeliers, past the stairs, down the hallway, out the front door, into the car, and drove away. Micah sat beside me, quiet, staring out the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, his little fists clenched in his lap. I reached over and brushed a curl from his forehead. He whispered, "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" And I swear that one sentence broke me in a way nothing ever has. I took a deep breath, swallowed the knot in my throat, looked him in the eyes and said, "No, baby. You did everything right. Some people just don't know how to treat others with kindness. That's not your fault." But the truth? I didn't say what I really wanted to say. I didn't tell him that this wasn't the first time Evelyn had tried to put me in my place, or that Garrett's silence wasn't new, or that I had let it slide too many times before. This time, it was different. This time, she came for my son. And that was the last mistake she'd ever make, because the next day, she showed up at my house, panicked, pale, begging. But by then, I wasn't the same woman who had walked into her home hoping to belong. The thing about marrying into money is, you never forget what it felt like before it. And even if you don't talk about it, even if you move into their world, decorate your life in their colors, buy the good napkins, learn the difference between brie and camembert, it doesn't matter. They still see you, or rather, what they think you are. My name is Janelle, and I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town most people wouldn't drive through at night. My mom worked doubles at a diner, and we scraped by with food stamps and whatever secondhand things we could find. But we had warmth, laughter, love. We didn't have much, but we had each other. When I met Garrett, he was different. At least I thought he was. He had this calm, soft-spoken charm. He listened when I talked, didn't flinch when I told him about my childhood or the fact that I'd had Micah from a previous relationship. If anything, he embraced it. He adored Micah, said it was his honor to be a part of our family. We got married after 2 years. Quiet ceremony. Just us, Micah, and a few close friends. Then came his family. That's where the cold started creeping in. Garrett's mother, Evelyn, was a woman carved from glass. Elegant, polished, sharp. Everything about her screamed wealth. The way she dressed, the way she spoke, the way she looked at people like they were beneath her. And from day one, she made it clear. I wasn't good enough for her son. She never said it outright. It was always a comment, a glance, a pause just a second too long. Oh, you don't know how to fold napkins like this? I guess you didn't grow up with formal dinners. This wine might be a bit strong for someone who didn't drink at debutante balls. I suppose Micah's father wasn't in the picture. That must have been challenging. The way she said challenging felt like a dagger disguised as sympathy. At first, I tried to smooth things over. I brought homemade cookies to family brunches. I complimented her decor. I offered to help in the kitchen, even though I always got assigned the most menial tasks, washing lettuce, arranging chairs, folding laundry I didn't mess up. And Micah? He tried so hard to win her over. He'd draw her pictures, pick flowers from our backyard to give her. One time, he even tried to call her Grandma Evelyn. She blinked and said, "Oh, sweetie, let's stick to just Evelyn." Grandma makes me sound old. He never called her that again. But still, every holiday, every birthday, every family event, I showed up. I smiled. I swallowed every cutting remark. Not for her, not even for Garrett, but for Micah. Because I wanted him to feel like he belonged somewhere. Because deep down, I hoped that maybe, just maybe, if we showed them enough kindness, they'd see us as family too. But with Evelyn, it was always a performance. And we were the ones failing the audition. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I'd almost convinced myself things were getting better. Garrett had started standing up for me more often. Subtle things like brushing off his mom's passive-aggressive remarks or offering to leave early if I looked uncomfortable. I told myself that was enough. That maybe, after all these years, we were finally starting to be accepted. That morning, we drove over early to help set the table. Evelyn didn't say much, but I thought I caught a trace of warmth in her voice when she greeted us. I even dared to feel hopeful. Micah wore the little blazer I'd bought him, a blue one with gold buttons. He looked so proud. He asked if he could carry the pumpkin pie we made together. I watched him walk up the stairs holding it carefully. His face lit up like this was the moment everything would change. And in a way, it did. Just not the way I expected. Because all it took was one seat, one bowl, one sentence. And everything I'd spent years holding together shattered right there on that perfectly arranged Thanksgiving table. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Because what Evelyn didn't know, what no one in that room realized, was that this wasn't the story of a woman being broken. This was the story of a woman who had finally had enough. The thing about betrayal is, it never happens in an instant. It builds, like slow poison. Looking back, I should have known something was off that day. Evelyn had been quieter than usual, too polite, too composed, like she was holding back something she was almost excited about. But I ignored it. Told myself I was overthinking. Told myself this was Thanksgiving for God's sake. Maybe, just maybe, she was turning a corner. Micah had been glowing all morning. He kept asking, "Will I get to sit next to you, Mom?" And I said, "Probably, baby. We'll see where the seats are." He'd packed his tiny backpack with a book. He always brings one when we go somewhere that might make him anxious. He chose The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Said he liked that the kids in the story didn't belong at first, but still got to be heroes. We arrived early. Evelyn greeted us at the door wearing a pale pink sweater set and a brooch shaped like a snowflake. Perfect, cold, decorative. She gave Garrett a cheek kiss. Me? She offered a nod. When she saw Micah, she said, "Well, look at you," then walked away before he could even answer. The house smelled like sage, butter, and rosemary. Classical music played softly in the background. Everything looked like it had come straight out of a lifestyle magazine. Gold-rimmed chargers, crystal goblets, individual name cards written in calligraphy. A stunning presentation. We helped set out the food. Well, I did. Garrett mostly followed Evelyn's lead, adjusting napkins or taste testing whatever she handed him. Then it was time for dinner. Evelyn called everyone to the table. She sat at the head, naturally. Garrett sat beside her. Her other son, Patrick, and his wife, Elise, sat across from each other mid-table, already chatting about some charity gala. I looked around for Micah's name card. I didn't see it, until I noticed the corner, far end of the table. A little off to the side, not quite part of the full place setting arrangement. I walked over, and my stomach dropped. There was no plate, no silverware, no linen napkin, just a shiny silver dog bowl. Inside it, brown lumps, kibble, real dog food. I stood there, blinking, frozen in place. Micah trotted up behind me. "Is this my spot?" he asked, eyes wide, trying to sound excited. He saw it before I could stop him. His smile fell like a brick. Then came the voice, Evelyn's, clear and proud, like she'd been rehearsing it for days. "A child from the slums doesn't need a feast." Every word hit like a slap. Time stopped. Micah didn't cry. He just stared at the bowl, face slowly going blank. I saw it happening, the internal shutdown, like he was building a wall inside himself just to survive the moment. He bit his bottom lip, hard, and looked up at me. Just one silent question in his eyes. Why? And the worst part? No one said a word. Garrett looked frozen. Didn't move. Didn't even look at us. Elise took a sip of wine, eyes darting down. Patrick coughed. Even the dog laying by the fireplace sensed something had shifted. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to ask Evelyn what kind of monster humiliates a child at Thanksgiving just to prove a point. But I didn't, because Micah was watching me. So I took a breath, and I chose dignity. I walked to his chair, got down on one knee, looked him in the eyes and said softly, "Let's go." He nodded. His little hand slipped into mine. We walked out of that perfect room in complete silence. Our footsteps were the only sound. I didn't even hear Evelyn speak again. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought she'd won. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving to protect the one person in the world who actually mattered. We got in the car. I started the engine. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. Micah didn't say anything for a long time. Then, barely above a whisper, he asked, "Did I embarrass you?" I slammed the brakes on my tears. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, baby, you are the only person in that house who made me proud." And I meant every word, because in that moment I realized I'd spent years walking on eggshells, shrinking myself, trying to keep peace with a woman who didn't even see us as human. But that night, as Micah fell asleep in my lap on the couch, I made a decision. She'd never get a second chance to hurt my son again. I didn't sleep that night. Micah had drifted off on the couch with his head in my lap, and I sat there, stroking his hair, staring at the TV without watching it. My body was still. My mind was not. I kept replaying it. Evelyn's smirk. That damn dog bowl. Garrett's silence. The food no one touched after we left. The clock ticking louder and louder as I sat there in the dark with a lump in my throat and a storm behind my ribs. You know how people say, that was the moment everything changed? They're right, because that night something in me snapped, but not in a loud, chaotic way. No screaming, no punching walls. It was quieter than that, scarier. It was the kind of stillness that only comes when a woman stops doubting herself. I had bent too far, too long. And for what? To be tolerated? To be insulted behind French doors and white tablecloths, while my son, my beautiful, sensitive, brilliant boy, sat there wondering if he didn't deserve a real seat at the table? Number not anymore. I gently lifted Micah, carried him to his bed, tucked him in. He didn't stir. Not even when I kissed his forehead and whispered, "No one will ever make you feel small again, I promise." Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and pulled out my laptop. I didn't even know what I was searching for at first. Lawyers, maybe. Family therapists. I typed in, "how to set legal boundaries with in-laws," and fell into a rabbit hole of posts, threads, and articles written by other women who had been pushed too far. I read one comment that stopped me cold. "You're not overreacting. You're just finally reacting." And suddenly, I wasn't just reading. I was making a plan. I opened a new document and wrote down 3 words. No more access. No more forced family gatherings. No more pretending for Garrett's sake. No more polite smiles at the expense of my son's dignity. I'd talk to a lawyer, find out what my rights were, maybe even call child services just to confirm that I had full say over who could interact with Micah. I didn't want Evelyn within a mile of him. And Garrett? He'd have to choose. Not in an ultimatum kind of way, but in a truth or consequence kind of way. I needed a partner, not a neutral spectator. If he couldn't stand with us, then I'd stand on my own. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I heard the front door creak. Garrett. He had gone back to Evelyn's after dinner, said he had to calm things down. I didn't ask what that meant. I just stared at him as he walked into the living room, loosened his tie, and sat on the edge of the couch like he was about to apologize for not picking up milk on the way home. I didn't know she was going to do that, he said quietly. I didn't respond. He looked up at me, guilt painted across his face like it was supposed to be enough. She crossed a line, Janelle, I know that. I waited. He hesitated, then finally added, I told her she's not welcome in our lives anymore. I told her she's done. That surprised me. I looked at him trying to figure out if he meant it or if this was just damage control. You should have said that years ago, I said. I know, he whispered. Then silence again. Not comfortable silence, truthful silence. The kind that makes or breaks everything. He stood up and started to walk away. Garrett, I called. He turned. If she shows up here, she doesn't come in. I mean it. He nodded. I understand. And then he went to bed, alone. I stayed up another hour, organizing everything in my head like I was about to go to war, because in a way, I was. Not out of revenge, not even out of anger, but because when someone hurts your child in front of you and smiles while doing it, that's the moment you stop hoping for peace and start demanding protection. I thought the storm had passed, but then, just after sunrise, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there she was. Evelyn, hair undone, no pearls, no lipstick, face pale, hands shaking, voice trembling. I need to talk to you, she said. She stood on my doorstep like a ghost, bare-faced, hair frazzled, no designer coat, no carefully chosen brooch, just Evelyn, stripped of her armor. It was barely 7 a.m., and the sun hadn't fully risen. The cold bit through my pajama sleeves as I held the door just wide enough for her to see me, and not a step more. I need to talk to you, she said. I didn't respond. She wrung her hands, those perfectly manicured fingers now chipped and trembling. Please, just a minute. I glanced down the hall. Micah was still sleeping. I didn't want his day tainted by her face. Not again. You can talk, I said, but you're not coming in. She blinked, clearly not used to being denied. Then something shifted in her expression. That smug, calculated gleam I'd seen so many times before was gone. In its place was something I never expected from her. Panic. I think I ruined everything, she said, voice shaking. He told me he never wanted to see me again. Garrett, my son. She stared at me like I might offer her comfort. I didn't move. I didn't think he'd actually cut me off, she continued, her words tumbling. He always came back around. I pushed, but he's soft like his father. I never thought... She swallowed, as if realizing just how alone she really was. He meant it, didn't he? Yes, I said simply. Her breath caught like I'd slapped her. She sat down on the porch bench without asking, clutching her purse like it held the last pieces of her dignity. You don't understand what it's like to watch your son slip away from you. I stared at her, almost stunned by the irony. You don't get to say that, I said quietly, not after what you did to my son. Her eyes welled, but I wasn't sure if it was guilt or just fear of losing control. It was a joke. It was meant to make a point. I didn't think he'd take it that way. I didn't think you would. You put dog food in front of an 8-year-old and called him a child from the slums. I snapped. What reaction were you expecting? She looked away, ashamed or maybe just calculating. I didn't think I was being cruel. I thought, no, I cut her off. You thought you could humiliate me by humiliating my child. You wanted to put me in my place, like always. But you didn't break me, Evelyn. You broke your son's heart. And you lost whatever sliver of family you had left. The silence between us was deafening. She finally said, I thought I was protecting him. From women like you. There it was, the truth. Bitter, ugly, and finally naked. I should have felt rage, but I didn't. I just felt tired. Tired of the games. Tired of the cruelty dressed up as class. Tired of trying to decode passive aggression like it was a language I needed to survive. You were never protecting him, I said. You were protecting the illusion of control. But Garrett doesn't belong to you anymore. And Micah? He's not yours to judge. He's not a symbol of where I came from. He's a child. One you publicly humiliated and emotionally scarred because you needed to feel powerful. She flinched. Good. I stepped forward, not threatening, but firm, strong. You are not welcome in our home, not today, not tomorrow, not unless Micah decides he wants to see you, and you will apologize to him first, not me. Her eyes widened. You're letting a child decide whether I can be in your lives? Yes, I said, because that child has more emotional maturity than you ever will. She opened her mouth to protest, but there was nothing left to say. She knew it. I knew it. I closed the door. And just like that, the weight lifted. Inside, I walked back to Micah's room. He was still fast asleep, one arm curled around his book, his soft breath steady. I sat on the edge of his bed, tears stinging my eyes, not from pain anymore, but from a strange, aching relief. Because for the first time since marrying into that family, I finally felt like I was standing on solid ground. Not as Garrett's wife, not as Evelyn's disappointment, not as the poor girl who should be grateful, but as Micah's mother. And that title, that role, it was the only one that ever really mattered. It's been 3 weeks since Thanksgiving, 3 weeks since Evelyn showed up on my porch, shaking and speechless, 3 weeks since I told her she wasn't welcome anymore, since I drew a line in the sand and refused to step back over it, no matter how many times I'd been taught that family means forgiveness, even when it's undeserved. I've spent most of those days just breathing again, not looking over my shoulder, not preparing for the next dig or dressing Micah like he's going into battle with a smile, just breathing. Micah has been different too, lighter, in ways only I would notice. He doesn't ask if he's going to see the fancy grandma anymore. He doesn't bring her drawings to family events. He hasn't even mentioned the dog bowl. But last night, as I tucked him into bed, he looked at me and said, "You didn't let her win." I was stunned. "What do you mean, baby?" He shrugged, pulling the blanket up to his chin. "She tried to make me feel small, but you didn't let her." My throat closed up. I kissed his forehead and turned off the lamp, blinking fast so he wouldn't see the tears. I used to think protecting your child meant making things work, smoothing things over, being the peacekeeper, keeping the family together for their sake. But I was wrong. Protecting your child sometimes means walking away from tradition, expectation, even blood, if it means keeping their soul intact. Garrett and I have been rebuilding. I won't pretend it's been easy. We've had long, painful conversations. Some days I still wonder if he's strong enough to really stand on this side with us. The difference now is, I'm not afraid to say what I need anymore. I'm not afraid to walk alone, if that's what it takes to keep Micah whole. He started therapy. Garrett, I mean. He told me he wants to understand why he always froze, why it took something that extreme to wake him up. I respect that. I don't need perfection, just effort, growth, ownership. As for Evelyn, she sent a letter last week, a real one, handwritten. No excuses, no manipulations, just an apology. She wrote, "I thought my coldness made me strong. Now I see it only made me empty. I hurt Micah. I hurt you, and I don't know if I can ever fix that, but I will stay away until he says otherwise. I understand now. Your silence was strength, and I never had that." I haven't responded. I don't know if I ever will, because I realize something else in all this. Not every story needs a reconciliation to have a happy ending. Sometimes healing looks like distance. Sometimes closure looks like a locked door. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop trying to rewrite someone else's role in your life and start rewriting your own. Micah and I started a new tradition this year. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, just the two of us, we made a gratitude picnic on the living room floor. No formality, no place cards, just us in pajamas, eating leftover mac and cheese and talking about the things we were thankful for. He said, "I'm thankful for Mom not letting mean people stay." I said, "Me too." We laughed. We watched old cartoons. He read me a chapter from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I listened, and I thought about how that story ends, not just with a battle, but with 4 kids who finally realize their power, even when the world tells them they're small. That's what I want for him, to never forget his worth. To know that family isn't about bloodlines and dinner invitations. It's about safety, respect, love that doesn't humiliate or demand that you shrink yourself to fit in. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt the need to endure someone's cruelty because they're family, please hear this. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to protect your children. You're allowed to say, "That was the last time." You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone a seat at your table just because they share your last name. Micah's seat is now next to mine, where it belongs. His plate is full. His eyes are bright. His spirit is intact. And that's what real family looks like. That's my story, and not the one I ever wanted to tell, but maybe the one someone out there needed to hear. If you've ever felt like the outsider at the table, if you've ever been made to feel small in a room you tried so hard to belong in, if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your child, I want you to know you're not alone, and you're not wrong for walking away. If this story touched you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their strength. Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and your stories matter too. And if you want more real stories like this, raw, honest, and unapologetically human, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Because around here, we don't just tell stories, we reclaim them. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself and the ones who truly see you.